Good morning and welcome back. I am feeling much better and I'm here just in time to celebrate with you what is now open season for market manipulation and insider trading. If last week, when Donald Trump announced these insane tariffs, that were not reciprocal, but actually some weird formula of punishing other countries for trade deficits, something that we made clear made no sense. If last week we had Liberation Day, yesterday was Manipulation Day. Absolutely. And I just want to share this with you what is going on here. And you know that normally I would dive deep into the weeds, my friends, and I would tell you, let me give you the actual legal analysis. I'm going to hold the legal analysis and tell you the facts first because you've got to trust me on this. My areas of research and writing are not just corporate and white collar crime, but I teach securities regulation, which is essentially investment law. And in my book, Big Dirty Money, which I guess I'm obligated to plug for my my press, Viking, which is a part of Penguin Random House, there is a chapter on government corruption, my friends, and it opens with the insider trading that took place right before the announcement of COVID. So, this is something I know about, I'm familiar with, but I don't want to go into the weeds with you because I don't want your eyes to glaze over. I'm going to keep it simple. Donald Trump, it appears, facilitated some kind of market manipulation whereby there were people or institutions who heavily bought in to the plummeting stock markets yesterday, well before he even put up that Truth Social post saying this is a good time to buy. And then again, that well before he made the public announcement on True Social that he was going to supposedly pause most of the tariffs for 90 days. So let me give you this sequencing. This is corrupt. This was apparently a giant payday for people who were in the know. There is no question for me. I want to know who knew what and when they knew it, who bought what, and when they bought it. This might be the biggest example of corruption at the intersection of insider trading and government corruption in US history. And I am not joking when I say that. So let me first share with you a clip from my former law professor and my former senator. She still is a senator. I just don't live in Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren. And in order to share this with you, because it is a YouTube link, let me go ahead and pull up this screen so I can do this. This comes. I'm going to click through. This is Elizabeth Warren 14 hours ago on Blue Sky, saying that she's calling for an investigation into whether President Trump manipulated the market to benefit his Wall Street donors. Did he help insiders cash in on his tariff flip flopping? It sure looks like corruption. Let's go ahead.
yesterday. Now there's confusion, there's chaos. No one knows what the tariffs will be tomorrow or the next day or next week or next month. But here's what we do know. Are prices still going up? Yes. Are businesses still wary about investing? Yes. Are millions of working people still worried about their jobs and millions of small businesses still worried about closing shop? Yes. And right before Donald Trump declared that some of his tariffs were off again, he sent out a message to his billionaire buddies. He posted, "This is a great time to buy," in all caps. Was that market manipulation? Was it corruption in plain sight? We need an independent investigation into market manipulation because Americans need to know whether President Trump or anyone in his administration manipulated the market to benefit their donors, all while they are working for the American people and while small businesses and those working families are paying a price. It's a disaster. But here's the thing. Republicans in Congress have a chance to stop him right now.
Okay. I'm going to skip the part about Republicans acting to stop him now. I don't see that happening anytime soon. So what exactly am I and Senator Warren talking about? Let's first show you. Okay, this was a front page at the New York Times right after this announcement happened. So here's the headline: Trump halts most so-called reciprocal tariffs for 90 days, but raises levy on China. What you can see, if you look carefully, is there is a moment yesterday when there is, you can see at the bottom, so across the bottom, if you look carefully, this chart starts on April 2nd and goes to yesterday, April 9th. Right? And it's not an open or close. It's like the daily movements. Sometimes you look at a chart and says, what is the market's open at? What does it close at? This happens to be the S&P 500. It's a basket. It's an index that represents a basket of stocks of large publicly traded companies. We call them publicly traded because members of the public own them, but it's part of the private sector, right? And there are 500 of them. And yes, what's in and out of that basket can change. Let's not worry about that. But you can see at the beginning of the day, there's a vertical line. You see how low the market opens. And then you see it start to creep up. And then there's a moment it shoots up. And the moment it shoots up is the moment Donald Trump announced that he was dropping these so-called reciprocal tariffs. The S&P shot up at that point more than 7%. I can't even begin to tell you how huge that is. We're going to do the math and talk about the kind of money people made. And let me be clear to you. If you know something is going to happen, or you suspect, because Donald Trump's unpredictable, that something's likely to happen, you can make well over 7%. There are instruments designed just for this. Okay, before I get to this, I'm going to show you why we're suspicious. This is, below this is a someone who posts on Blue Sky named Unusual Whales. And he's taking a look, and I'm going to blow this up on my screen so I can see it better. So the top line is my friend Jesse Eisinger, investigative journalist who is now an editor at ProPublica. Yes, I like to say he's a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist who won a Pulitzer with a colleague at ProPublica related to the 2008 financial crisis. He says the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, is the only agency that could get to the bottom of who did these trades, and they would have to want to know. There still are some commissioners on the SEC who would want to know. Query whether they can act independently and ask their staff to get this data. Now let's look below. Okay, what Unusual Whales wrote, what you can see is, all right, I think people knew of the tariff pause and traded it beforehand. you can see before Trump posted buy on Truth Social, traders opened, and I don't need to tell you the shorthand, and they open what are called calls. I'm going to tell you about that in SPY. This would be you could do a call. These calls are representing how to buy into an index before the price goes up. Okay. Right before the news, someone opened 509 calls that would expire today. That's something he said yesterday. Those calls are up 2,100% in an hour. And you can see the chart. What he's trying to show you here is the dot of when the announcement happened. That's the green. And when the calls opened. What the hell am I talking about? Okay, here's what I'm talking about. I'm just going to be super clear. If you were investing in something, I don't know, you had $1 million to invest and you could make 7% on it instantly. I think you probably know this, right? If you had, let's just make it 100 million to make it easy. If you had $100 million, because some of these folks do, right? If you had $100 million and you could make 7%, sure thing. What is that? It's just $7 million. I don't know. You and I mean, that's a shit ton of money, but you and I don't have $100 million. How is it possible that instead of going up 7%, this person's trade went up 2,000%? I'm not even doing the math. I'm just going to tell you how this shit works. You hear this word call option. You've probably heard the word put option. This is where I'm not doing law. I'm going to tell you something you need to know. It's pretty flippin' cool. You can call option means call it in. Let's say I'm pretty sure a stock that's trading at $100 a share is going to go up. And I think it's going to go up to $110, but it's trading at $100. I could place a trade where I'd say, I want to enter into a contract, let's say with Jason Smith. Hi, Jason. I want to enter into a contract with Jason Smith. He owns some of this stock that's trading at $100. And I would say, Jason, I want to buy the right from you. I'd like to, Jason, I think that stock that you own, it's at 100. I'm spelling out what my thought process is, maybe not what I tell Jason. I think that stock's going to go up to 110. So Jason, I want to pay you for the right, not the obligation, Jason, to buy that stock from you at for $110. I might even think it's going to go up higher, right? So, Jason's probably thinking, well, shit, like I would pay for that. I don't think it's going to go up that high. And if I bought it for him for $101, that's going to be more expensive to buy the right at that. But if I say 110, he might accept, because it's a risk. If I say 101, he's probably thinking it could happen. I don't want her. What if it goes up to 105 and then I only get 101 on it? Then Jason would lose some money. But if I say, Jason, I'd like to buy a share of that stock from you or 10 shares of that stock from you, what have you, for 110, maybe Jason would say, okay, fine, Jennifer, give me, I don't know, give me $1. I'm picking the number. So I would say, Jason, I want to pay you $1. Jason, would you do this? I'll pay you $1 for that stock. The stock is in Prism Inc. I'm just going to make that up. Jason owns a share of Prism Inc. It's trading at $100. I say, Jason, I'll pay you $1. And if Prism Inc. goes up to, basically, I don't have the obligation, but at any time before tomorrow when the stock market closes at 4 p.m., Jason, I have the right to buy that stock from you at $110. So you're probably thinking, okay, Jennifer's paying me $1. It's free money. I get to keep the dollar. And you know what? it's probably never going to go up to 110. And if it goes up to 105 and she pays me 110 for it, yay for me. So that is what a call option would be. Now, the bigger the gap between what it's trading at and what my strike price is, the cheaper it is for me to buy it. So this person or these people who made 2,000%, what we're talking about, instead of taking my $100 million, right? Because now let's talk turkey here. I got $100 million, Jason, right? Now I got 100 million. And you have 1 million shares of Prison Inc. I got $100 million. And you've got 1 million shares of this. Now, what am I going to do? I can spend $1 per share for you. So $1 million, I could spend $10 million of my 100 million. And then I could buy call options, right? On 100 shares. What if you had, sorry, I said it was $1 a share. I didn't say it was $10 a share. If you got 1 million, I could spend $1 million. If you had 100 million shares, which you wouldn't, if you had 1 million shares, I'm spending $1 million on that, right? And I sit around and I wait. And how much money am I going to make then? Right? I'm going to invest $1 million on, anyway, I'm not going to go. So I'm getting deep dive into the math. The point I'm making is if I have $100 million, I can make more than $7 million if the stock market goes up because I am essentially buying it on a margin. I'm basically magnifying that by 10%. So I could make 70% instead. So if I have $100 million and I only have to put if I put 10% down, instead of making 7 million, I could make 70 million. I think that's my math. I think that's correct. So what we're talking about here is people doing some kind of complicated purchases of call options. And forgive my math, people, I'm doing it on the fly. The idea is you are magnifying by 10 times if you only have to put 10% down a sure thing. Now, what's the downside? Donald Trump can't be trusted. The downside is you spent all this money on these call options that they don't exercise. But folks knew what he was going to do. And everybody thinks the reason why he put out that True Social in the morning is because he'd been talking to people and said, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take these tariffs off. And he decided as a cover that if you put that out in the morning before the markets open, no one could accuse him because he told everybody to buy. But he actually is, if he were anyone else other than the president of the United States, he would be being investigated for insider trading, market manipulation, and criminal violation of the federal securities laws. Now, the deal is that's never going to happen because the U.S. Supreme Court would argue that making these announcements was inside of his power as a president or what have you. That's not, and also he's a sitting president right now, so he won't be investigated. Plus, he can control the SEC and the DOJ. But what about all the other people who traded? Would he be able to pardon him? You bet. So all of this is kind of depressing, but also, my friends, kind of in line entirely with what is happening in the Trump administration. As I began, this is an open season on white-collar crime. It's not just this market manipulation day yesterday. It's also, as you know, Donald Trump has announced that this thing called the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, enacted in the 70s. Many countries followed suit. Businesses wanted it. This was a law that was passed so that U.S. businesses could no longer pay bribes to foreign officials. Businesses loved it because general counsels no longer had to tell the people in other countries, go ahead, pay those bribes, those shakedowns to do business in other countries. Now, this was put in if you can believe it, before this law was in place, companies would, in their financial statements and in their taxes, actually have expenses that said bribe expenses. You would only get in trouble if you didn't pay taxes. You would only get in trouble if you didn't disclose the fact that you had paid these bribes. Well, that was supposed to end in the 70s. Now, of course, some companies continued to engage in these bribes, and they would get prosecuted, or at least they would have to enter into these settlement agreements with the Department of Justice. Donald Trump recently announced a few weeks ago, no more enforcement of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Businesses can go ahead and pay bribes. Businesses now have to pay bribes because everybody knows the US is no longer enforcing this. And now other countries who followed suit internationally and entered into these similar statutes are wondering why the F should our businesses not be able to pay bribes. So now international corruption. In addition, Donald Trump dismantled this crypto crime task force involving in people who use cryptocurrency to engage in tax evasion, money laundering, or in and of itself are cheating the public, right? Got rid of that. Also got rid of this whole oligarch task force. Dude, also, he just apparently is dismantling at the DOJ, the IRS division to investigate tax fraud. Now, you might think, oh, then all of us don't have to pay our taxes. Think again. That's not how this works. Most people, like you and I, have our tax withheld by our employer, and actually we're looking for tax refunds when we file our returns in April. And if you do not, for some reason, pay your taxes and you are not a friend of Donald Trump or an oligarch, you will be gone after either by this administration, because it's really easy to catch you, or remember that there is a very long statute of limitations on this, and you could be prosecuted by the next administration. So remember what we've talked about in a society under authoritarianism and oligarchy, something Ernst Frankl, who was, as we know, a Jewish man who escaped pre-Nazi or sort of early Nazi Germany before the death camps and Final Solution was established. He wrote this book called The Dual State, and we've talked about how there's two states. He calls it the prerogative state, the people who have perks and prerogatives, and then the normative state, the place where rules bind us. There's another way to say this. If you have money, if you're wealthy and well-connected, the law will protect you. For the rest of us, the law will bind us. Do not forget where you are in this corrupt pecking order. Now, my friends, I am going to have a guest join our show today. But before that, I do have a treat for you. And I, of course, also have some crazy town, but we will do that with our guest. Now, our guest today is Christine Chen Zinner. She is an up-and-coming lawyer who works at something called Americans for Financial Reform. You may not know who they are, but they are an incredible think tank and advocacy organization. I've worked with them during the Dodd-Frank era. They are, in large part, the reason why they help build a coalition to support people like Elizabeth Warren when she helped get her brainchild, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, in place. In other words, the Consumer Bureau. And Christine is going to join us to talk about, I think you're going to guess, what Donald Trump's regime and the Republicans are doing to try to dismantle the highly successful Consumer Bureau. And let me put that in dollars and cents. Dodd-Frank was enacted in 2010. The Bureau was so-called stood up and created in 2011. And since then, they have been able to, through enforcement actions and investigations and consumer complaints, get more than 20 billion, with a B, dollars returned to consumers in that time frame. This is unheard of. It is highly successful, but of course, and let me just be clear, this is a consumer bureau that was intended to consolidate power that had been disparate across many agencies. And this consumer bureau focuses on financial protection, right? They're the ones who busted Wells Fargo when Wells Fargo had the practice of setting up accounts without customer consent. This is an incredible organization Christine is going to talk to us about at 9 a.m. But before we get to that, I've got a couple things and a treat. Now, you know how I hate showing Donald Trump's face on this show, and I do want to avoid it, but I've got to first do a couple things. First, let me share with you the fluffers who are actually saying this is going to be Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce. Last week, he's saying how great it is to put on these insanely punishing and irrational so-called tariffs on foreign countries. Today, he's talking about Donald Trump's genius because yesterday, Donald Trump had the flippin' chutzpah, the audacity to say that he is a genius because he has now presided over the largest one day, he claims, hike in stock market prices. It's like the dude had a gun to the head of the stock market and it cowered on the ground. The bond market flipped the fuck out. And then he takes the gun away. People sighed with relief. He does this so his friends make money. And then he wants a fucking pat on the back. I'm sorry, I'm swearing. Let's play idiot Howard Lutnick now.
Not the policy before then.
He also seems to be a great stock pundit, Mr. Secretary. Earlier this morning, before the pause, he put out a message saying it's a great time to buy, and here we are. Here we are, well, much higher.
Cool. I'd always bet on Donald Trump. Every time I'd always bet on
He
Donald
also
Trump.
wrote DJT, which is a ticker for his media company.
No. Every text
that was just his.
Does.
That was just
every
okay.
text he sends to me. That's his name.
But that was a great time to buy the market, right? I mean, uncanny.
Well, Donald Trump understands.
He also seems to be a great stock.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to rewind this, but do you hear what she does? She's very snarky here. She's accusing Donald Trump of market manipulation. And Lutnick says, I'd always bet on Trump. Did he know in advance? Sorry, I'm gonna scoot this up a little bit. Let's play it.
Mr. Secretary, earlier this morning before the pause, he put out a message saying it's a great time to buy, and here we are. Here we are, well, much higher.
Cool. I'd always bet on Donald Trump. Every time I'd always bet on
He
Donald
also
Trump.
wrote DJT, which is a ticker for his media company.
No. Every text
that was just his.
Does.
That was just
every
okay.
text he sends to me. That's his name.
But that was a
how
great time to buy the market, right? I mean, uncanny.
Well, Donald Trump understands that America is the greatest country. All right, we are the greatest country, and we have.
Okay, I got to stop there. My favorite thing she said was uncanny. Totally deadpan. You know what she's talking about. Now, I got one more thing to say. Before the treat, Jason, I'm talking about you. You know that we always talk about this adage or this statement from Alexander Solzhenitsyn. The simple step of a courageous individual is not to take part in the lie. Similarly, the tell, how we know someone is an utter coward or is making money off of the rest of us, is when they perpetuate what is so clearly a lie. Let's take a listen.
I'll say this. I think America needs to recognize we're in a remarkable moment. We have an absolute genius of an entrepreneur, number one, and one that loves our country and making sure that we're going to be, at the end of the day, in a much better position. So I'm excited about seeing what's happening, and I love also that he's showing what it is to reward good behavior.
Okay, got to stop this. This member of Congress, reward good behavior. You know what they're actually claiming? Donald Trump and his mendacious, malevolent morons that surround him, or manipulators, what they're doing is they're claiming that 75 countries came to the table. So that's why he put it on pause. But they won't say who the 75 people are, 75 countries are. And it reminds us of like an 80s rom-com where someone claims to have a model that he's dating. And so they say, well, who is she? And they said, oh, she doesn't go to this school, or she lives in Canada. Okay, you guys, 75 countries, come on. The story here is that the bond market was out of control. When people said yields were extremely high, what they mean is bond market prices were collapsing. People were selling off U.S. treasuries. And I believe there's an expression during the Bill Clinton era. Hold on, come back. There's someone who said during the Bill Clinton era that when I die, I want to come back as the bond market. That was James Carville. Yes, he is still around. And this is what he said at the time. I used to think that if there was reincarnation, I wanted to come back as the president or the Pope or as a .400 baseball hitter. But now I would like to come back as the bond market. You can intimidate anybody. And I believe that took place in 1998. Again, now we're getting into the weeds, but trust me, Donald Trump didn't do anything because of 75 countries. Someone sat him down and spooked him. And I think he's so stupid that he thought he could do all of this and everything would be fine. Okay, now, one last thing before I bring Christine up onto the stage. Okay. And again, if I had more time, I would have scribbled out his face on the video, but I haven't been well. And so just, you can ignore his face and his voice, but this is near and dear to my heart. The governor of my state, Gretchen Whitmer, went down to Washington to speak with Donald Trump. And I applaud her for doing this because unlike a law firm where they could stand tough, Michigan's entire economy could be destroyed if he continues this craziness with tariffs on Canada, which, by the way, are apparently still on, but no one knows what they are. In addition, Michigan needs some help in other ways, including with this invasive carp, this fish in the Great Lakes that could destroy the whole ecosystem. And for me, this idea of the environment, it's enduring. Once that happens, there's no undoing it. So yes, she did that. Now, just to be clear, people are kind of attacking Governor Whitmer for doing this. Now, she went to meet with him, but she was not told they were going to usher her into the Oval Office during a press conference, which of course is incredibly humiliating because then she had to stand there quietly as he said some whole other bunch of stuff that she didn't agree with. So I want to show you what happened here and how stupid he is. And then I am going to bring Christine up on stage. Okay, here we go.
Nation, we protect the pristine waters. Yep.
And, all of a sudden, I assume the lakes are all interconnected, right? Yeah. So at some point, they're going to be in the other lakes.
Holy shit. They were talking about, I think, Lake Michigan, which is the lake on the west side of the state between Michigan and Illinois. Donald Trump literally said, I assume the Great Lakes are all interconnected. No, they're not. Does he even know that they're freshwater lakes? Does he even know that they're a result of the melting glaciers? I mean, this man is probably the dumbest man on the planet. But there you have it. When you have to go down and kiss the ring, you do have to swallow your pride. And I applaud Whitmer for taking a hit for the state. Remember, she's already termed out as governor. And again, it takes a lot of courage to do this, but she will be being criticized maybe for the duration. This may create, I hope not, a stain on her reputation. People are attacking her, but you know what? She chose our state. She chose saving the environment for hundreds of years over her pride. And that is a choice I would make. It is a non-selfish choice. Now, let me give the introduction that is due to Christine Chen Zinner. She is a senior policy counsel at Americans for Financial Reform. Her focus is consumer financial justice issues to the extent that still exists and maybe will again after this regime is gone. Welcome to the show, Christine.
Good morning, Jen. I know that we're all, fighting so many fires. I'm so grateful for you giving me some space this morning to talk about consumer financial justice. And we are holding on to hope that, there still will be consumer financial justice, that the CFPB will survive intact during this Trump administration, just as it did the last time. I just wanted to share a little bit about the CFPB and what they do.
Wait, can I stop you for 1 second?
Yes.
Can you tell us, I admire you so deeply. Like, you are doing the kind of law that when I went to law school, I thought I would do. I met Ralph Nader. He spoke at my law school and I'm like, I want to be a consumer lawyer. And I'm so happy with what you do. Can you tell us how you got into consumer law and tell us a little bit more then about what you're doing now?
Yeah, and I will say, actually, my manager is part of the Nader diaspora. So yes, I'm very proud of Americans for Financial Reform. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit coalition of over 200 community, consumer, civil rights, labor, and faith-based organizations. We're all working together to lay the foundation for a strong, stable, and ethical financial system. Really, a lot of our work is to eliminate inequity and systemic racism in the financial system, because as you know, Jen, you were there in the beginning, financial regulation can be a really powerful tool to make change for better or for worse. So my background as a consumer advocate began right out of law school in, I would say, I think it was like the fall of 2006 or 2007. I won a consumer fellowship to go to DC to work with Consumer Reports magazine, which I still
Wait, stop
love.
there. Consumer Reports magazine? Right after law school? That's amazing.
Yes, I was so lucky. So I had a choice at that time, either to clerk, to stay in Georgia and clerk, or to move to DC to be in this fellowship and, policy work. At the time, I thought, wow, you could potentially make change on a broad level instead of case by case. So I took my chances, moved to DC, took on this fellowship. Back then, Consumer Reports, the DC advocacy wing was called Consumers Union.
Right.
And, this was also right around the time 2007 going into 2008, when I'm sure you remember the housing bubble burst. And it turns out many people had signed up for terrible mortgages that they couldn't actually afford to pay back. And the banking regulators, as you had mentioned earlier, they failed to adequately oversee the consumer financial marketplace. They failed to protect people from predatory mortgages. And I think of this as like Lemony Snicket's series of unfortunate events. This led to 16 million people losing their homes to foreclosure, the elimination of like $17 trillion of household wealth. And this is kind of the backdrop of what led to the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, which you had mentioned earlier, on the heels of that 2008 financial crisis, which really, it feels like it wasn't that long ago. And it's surprising.
And let me just jump in and say, I do think a lot of people became radicalized. I should say it differently. I think there was a lot of justifiable populist anger after the financial crisis, which I do think, yes, there is obviously white supremacy and racism that motivated people to vote for Donald Trump. And I also do think for some people that maligned concept of economic anxiety was very real. I think there are people who were looking for a Bernie Sanders. And when Bernie Sanders wasn't an option, those voters did turn to Donald Trump stupidly and dangerously, because I think they were very angry with how the government handled the housing crisis. But continue, Christine.
Yeah, so in 2010, as you mentioned earlier, from this legislation that was passed, also the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was created. And that's why I'm actually really excited to be here with you and your viewers this morning, Jen. This past weekend, when I went into DC to participate in the Hands Off rally.
Yay!
It was so great. It was so great. And I know your viewers probably all went to their own Hands Off rallies. It was really uplifting, really inspiring, really hopeful. But I did carry my red CFPB sign with me on the train. I'm going to show you right now. Hands Off CFPB.
I need it. I need that.
That's such a great sign. Jen, people on the train were asking me, and these are our people. They were all very involved. They're all very concerned about democracy and the present moment in our country. And they were asking me, what is the CFPB? So I wanted to share with your viewers this morning what the small but really mighty Consumer Protection Agency does for everyday people, and how Trump and Musk and Doge and the billionaire oligarchs are really trying to stop its work completely, because it is so impactful and it does so much great work for everyday people. And I also want to share with your viewers ways that they can also take steps to try to keep the CFPB going, to keep its work going, and to let their members of Congress know, hey, please don't do anything that would undermine or weaken the CFPB. So just
Okay.
just a quick
Continue, sorry.
refresher. Yeah, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or the CFPB, is a law enforcement agency. It protects people when financial institutions cheat and defraud them. This is an agency that serves everyday people. It keeps a watchful eye on this consumer financial services marketplace. You know, they catch the bad guys when your credit report is wrongly dinged. If you have ongoing problems with your credit card, for instance, you're getting inaccurate bills, you're getting gouged with junk fees, and calling the credit card company isn't doing anything, you reach out to the CFPB. And as you mentioned earlier, Jen,
Can you stop? If you're going to reach out, you could just like Google it and find their phone number, right?
That's right. Well, before the current administration, you could have called. I mean, what we're told is you can still call, and we know you can still, theoretically enter in the complaint. What's really up in the air right now is something really being done about that? We don't think so. So it's not really working the way it's supposed to, and as it has in the past.
So up until this recent the most recent Trump regime, if you're like, oh my goodness, I've been cheated, you could go to the website, you could fill in the complaint, you could also call, and people would respond. It was incredible. Like I said before, it's over $20 billion. That's no joke. Okay, continue, Christine.
Over 20 billion for 200 million people and everyday people. I mean, how many of us can afford a lawyer if we have a financial dispute, right? We can't go find somebody and pay hundreds of dollars just to resolve a dispute that, may involve a lot of money, but not enough to justify hiring a lawyer. The CFPB was like the everyday person's lawyer, right? So because of the impactful work the CFPB was doing, calling out these financial bad guys, a lot of powerful, wealthy Wall Street banks, big tech companies, predatory lenders, and more recently, the billionaires, including Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Vivek Ramaswamy, they have all attacked the CFPB. They have gone on X. They've talked about deleting the agency. For years, like in 2018, the payday lending industry, they filed a case against the CFPB. They sued the CFPB claiming, oh, you know what, CFPB, you're not constitutionally structured or funded, so therefore we don't have to follow any of your rules. This case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the CFPB won the case. The Supreme Court, in a opinion that was 7-2, that was penned by Justice Thomas of all people.
So back up for a second. So what was this victory at the Supreme Court? What was the challenge? What were they trying to do to the CFPB?
They were trying to completely say, we don't have to follow any of the rules that you're imposing on us, CFPB, because you are not legitimately funded. The CFPB was designed to specifically be an independent agency funded by the Federal Reserve, which means, hey, you get to really focus on your consumer protection mission. You don't have
guys, let me back this up, because this is so important that Christine's saying. I don't know if you know this, but generally speaking, there might be a law passed that exists that created an agency, whether it's a Federal Trade Commission or it could be a banking regulator, what have you. Just generally speaking, the Securities and Exchange Commission. And I'm not speaking to how they get funded, but generally speaking, you could have a law saying we're going to do X, Y, and Z, like the IRS, right? But even if it exists, Congress goes through what's called appropriations, and the Appropriations Committee has to suggest how much money to actually give them. It's kind of like you may get an allowance from your parents, but they could change it at any time. Well, Elizabeth Warren, in designing this, was like, I don't want to deal with, one Congress may like us, one Congress may not. So they got their funding secured so that you wouldn't have to beg Congress for the money. And you're saying it comes from the Fed. Yes?
Yes.
So the Fed is the Federal Reserve, or there's going to be some other, but the idea is the funding was there because I knew it'd be a good agency. Okay, continue, Christine. Oops.
The payday loan industry, they didn't want to follow one of the rules, right? The CFPB was saying, hey, you can't keep trying to get money from people when the bank account has been denied twice. Like, you can't keep trying to extract money from people who don't have money. And they were saying, nope, we don't want to follow this rule. And by the way, we're going to come up with this argument that, oh, CFPB, the way you're funded is unconstitutional. Justice
And these
Thomas.
payday lenders charge huge amounts of, like, every time they ding your bank account, then you get charged another $30 from the bank. It's very extractive, and people are broke, and they said stop already. Okay, go ahead. And
People are broke and they can never get out of that debt spiral. It's really an unfortunate situation. But really, the end of that story is that, Supreme Court reiterated, hey, CFPB is constitutional. It's funded in the correct way. But again, the industry folks always have continued to try to attack the CFPB. Since its creation, it's always been under attacks because they've done such great work for everyday people, right? When you call financial institutions out, when you hold them accountable, you make some powerful enemies. And at this moment, for all of the viewers here, and Jen, to let you know why I think it's so important right now, is that, Trump, Elon Musk, Doge, the billionaire oligarchs, even Congress is, really allowing the CFPB's great work to come to a stop. More recently, I think it was in February, we first, heard that Trump had illegally fired, actually it was Doge, illegally fired a bunch of CFPB employees. They effectively locked the building up. They kept their staff from being able to go into the building. They took the letters off of the building. So any kind of signage that shows, that this was the CFPB building, it's all gone. And so what these actions are showing from the Trump administration is that not only is this law enforcement agency right now not doing its work to protect all of us, it's really sending a green light to industries, to financial institutions that it should be keeping an eye on. It's saying, hey, it's okay to go ahead and gouge your customers. It's okay to defraud people. It's okay to go ahead and hurt a bunch of people because we're not going to hold you accountable. We're not keeping an eye on you. They've also
in other words, this is kind of like a gift to the Wall Street donors, to their businesses. You mentioned, how Elizabeth Warren always uses the expression personnel is policy. And you didn't mention the names. You said some people were fired, but even more recently, there was a negotiated firing, resignation of the actual head of the CFPB. Is that important?
Yeah, I think all of these are just.
And that's Rohit Chopra, who had been a Federal Trade Commission commissioner and then became the director of the CFPB. He was kicked out too. Okay, so continue. You're telling me the whole idea is to gut this organization, to find a way to starve it, and to not let it enforce these laws so people can take money from us, right? These banks can now.
Exactly, Jen. I mean, they actually dropped a bunch of cases that under Director Rohit Chopra, there were some really great cases that really would have helped a bunch of us watching this show today. They dropped the Capital One case. So under the Trump administration, this new CFPB, what I'm calling the Vote CFPB, Russell Vote's CFPB.
Oh, by the way, guys, I forgot. Christine told me this yesterday. We were chatting. Russell Vote, remember that guy, the architect of Project 2025? They put him in charge of the CFPB, the guy who wants to dismantle it. Okay, continue.
This is like a horror movie, right? We hear about Project 2025, we hear about the CFPB, and now we're like, oh my gosh, Russell Vote's actually steering the ship here. So this CFPB has dropped a case that was filed against Capital One. I mean, so many people were impacted. They lost $2 billion in interest payments that they could have been making. Capital One kind of deceived. If you read the complaint, it says they deceived their customers. I think of these as corporate pardons, really. These are corporate pardons. They've pardoned, and dropped the cases against predatory lenders who were extracting fees from people that they knew weren't able to pay back those fees. I mean, some people like manufactured housing, a lot of people who live in those manufactured houses, they were taking loans that the companies knew they weren't able to pay back, and so they lost their homes. They even went so far a few weeks ago, Jen, I don't know if you came across this, they even went so far as to go to court to request to reverse a racial discrimination settlement that had previously already been worked out with the previous CFPB. Townstone Financial, you all should Google this. It's a Chicago-based mortgage lender. The CEO of Townstone, if you read the complaint, he made a bunch of racist remarks on the radio show that's tied to Townstone Financial. They actually went into a settlement with Townstone Financial, but Russell votes, CFPB went back to court and said, hey, can we undo this settlement? And can we take public money from the settlement and pay it back to Townstone? So,
you know what, Christine, I'm glad I didn't have my breakfast yet because I'm actually feeling nauseous, physically nauseous by what you're saying.
It is awful. It's awful. The more you look into this, the worse it gets. And so the part that I want us to feel like we can do something about.
Okay, empowerment. This is the empowerment section.
This is the empowerment. Okay, it comes with a little bit of more bad news, but I would call this empowerment and accountability. There's been 3 great rules that the CFPB finalized under the last administration. And unfortunately, 2 of those rules, there was a rule that would have lowered our overdraft fees from $35 down to $5. Jen, can you imagine if this rule had been allowed, if Congress had just gotten out of the way, this rule was finalized by the CFPB, it would have.
So let me be clear. So if you accidentally overdraft, which I know that many of us have done, $5 instead of 35, it's huge.
It's huge. It would have saved $5 billion for us. For the households that pay overdraft fees, it would have saved them $225 every single year. That's a lot of eggs, even in this time of inflation and tariffs.
That's a lot of eggs.
That's a lot of eggs. Yeah. So Congress voted yesterday, the Republican-led Congress voted to undo this rule. So not a single Democrat voted to undo the rule. It was all Republicans. And unfortunately, now this rule is dead. Another rule that they voted to undo. I know. So this is accountability. This is where you need to call your member of Congress, especially if you have a Republican member of Congress, and say, why are you doing this to me? Why are you?
Hey, Susan, one of the mods, Susan usually does this. Susan, Jason, or Deb, can you throw a link in there? Just how to call your member of Congress so people can see that. Go ahead, Christine.
Yeah, the second rule that your viewers should call about, Congress, the Republican-led Congress, voted to undo a rule that would have brought more consumer protections for our digital payment apps. So, everyone these days, on their phone, they have that payment app, Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. Elon Musk is trying to turn X into also a digital payment app too, right? This rule would have brought more oversight and supervision over those payment apps. I mean, right now, a bank is supervised, Zelle is supervised, but not Venmo, not PayPal, not Cash App. And so it would have, brought some regulatory parity. But again, Congress voted against that, and that is dead now as well. So again, please call your
stop.
member.
So you're telling me these really important things. And here's the number: the Congressional Switchboard 202-224-3121. And then you can you can say what state you're from. That will get you your senator. You can say what district you're in. If you don't know, you can tell them your zip code. So 202-224-3121. But Christine, you've told us 2 things. If these are already dead, what's the ask for the member of Congress?
The ask is there's one more rule that we think might be in jeopardy right now. It's the CFPB's medical debt rule. This is a rule that would take off medical debt from your credit reports. We know medical debt is not like other forms of debt. It has no predictive value about whether or not you will repay your other loans. I mean, in what I would think of as a uniquely American experience, even when we're covered by health insurance, like a medical emergency can leave us with thousands of dollars worth of debt. We shouldn't be punished for that with a lower credit score. We shouldn't be punished with 7 more years of more expensive loans because of medical debt that really we couldn't help, right? So this rule would take it off of your credit report.
So back up. So medical debt, that is, how old does it have to be to come off your credit report, are you saying?
So right now, we would like it to see it completely come off.
Oh, nice.
Yes, completely come off no matter what the amount is. And this rule would help 15 million people in the US right now with unjustly lowered credit scores from medical debt. So call your member of Congress, House or Senate, and please let them know. Please don't take a vote that would undo this rule. Please do not destroy the CFPB's medical debt rule. That is one.
And then, Christine said something to me, and you guys know this is important. Even if you don't think your Republican member of Congress or senator will move on this, you call them, because Congress is like a little beehive. And the staffers who get the phone calls go to lunch with each other or see each other, and they're like, holy moly, we got a lot of calls. Even if it doesn't change them, your voice really matters. So I'm encouraging 202-224-3121. And also, is there, after the show, I'm going to put in the comments. So if you're listening now, not live, Christine will send me an email, which will give it what's called a one-pager. We want a one-pager so you can actually read in one page and synthesize for yourself what is this rule and what you want your member of Congress to do so that you know exactly. I know people like to have it tangibly what they want to say.
Yeah, and just one last ask, Jen. I know we're running out of time. The very last thing is make sure when you call your member of Congress, tell them, please don't do anything that would undermine the CFPB's structure and funding. Please keep the CFPB intact the way it is right now. Let it do its work.
Now, I love this, but you can't leave yet. I know we're supposed to end at 9:30, and we will basically, Christine, but we have two things we're doing on our show next. We always do this thing called Crazy Town. And if you're game and you can stay around for that, that would be great. But I have a special treat before Crazy Town. And one of our mods, Jason Smith, has created, and I would like to debut what may be our new theme song. So I'm going to play that for y'all now, and we could even begin the show or play that in the show, like right after I do like a quick, the quick intro that you do at the beginning, like the cold open. And after the cold open, I could be playing this. So Jason Smith, thank you for doing this. Let's play it.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Jen Taub show. Well, welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There is hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Jen Taub show.
Okay, I'm stopping it there. It goes on a little bit.
I love that. I love that. Oh my goodness.
Isn't that amazing? Jason made that, and he's letting us use it. No copyright. So you guys, I want to hear in the comments. Bravo, Jason, if you love it. Everyone loves it. And it begins with hello, Prism Mates. PRISM. We'll explain that later if you don't know what that is. So we're going to be doing the new format of the show is I jump in with my cold open, then I play Jason's new song, Hello Prison Mates, and then we do the show. But Christine, oh, I need to get rid of this. Okay. Yes, Jason Smith.
You're so talented. That was great.
Yeah, he's one of the mods. Okay, so now we're going to play Crazy Town, which is no way as good as that. But let's play this and get ready for the Crazy Town clip, Christine. This is what I do the jazz hands thing. Okay. See, Jason's music is better, but this is Crazy Town, and Crazy Town is nuts. I am going to play for you this clip, then we'll react, and then we will leave, and we'll play ourselves out with the official show music. Here we go.
But the president's talking about shower heads. You don't have enough water that can come through your shower head because of Biden's regulations. And so again, fixing small things like that, hopefully it's going to get to dishwashers. Wouldn't it be great if dishwashers worked again, where you don't have to wash your dishes first and then put them in the dishwasher to actually get a little heat on them? I mean, common sense stuff he's doing.
No, 100%, sir. And like, I'm so glad that we were able to
comment, Christine.
You know what, Jen? All I can think of is this was the guy that was on The Real World like 20 years ago, right? How did we end up in this place? How did we? So, okay, everyone just needs to call their members of Congress. Do what we can. Do what we can. But yeah, that's crazy. That is crazy.
Yes, thank you for appreciating that. And now, have a lovely day, everyone. And here is the music we love.